There are moments that you never forget. Moments in history so searing that you remember exactly where you were when you heard it. For some of us this morning, it may have been President Kennedy's assassination in 1963. You remember where you were, who told you, and of course the way the world shifted. For me, it was September 11th. I know exactly where I was. Unreal. And now, it's October 7th. That day 2 years ago, I stood right here, hearing that there had been at first a terrorist attack that was, in the words of one of our Israeli members, lo tov. It was not good. And over the course, I learned a little bit more over the services. People came up and whispered to me more details. And by that night, which was Simchat Torah, we knew it was much, much worse. We canceled our live music. We toned down our celebration. We danced, as is the tradition, but it felt a little bit more perfunctory. On some level, it was mostly for the kids to have their simcha, to have their celebration. And then came 2 long years. 2 years of absolute hell for our hostages. 2 years of war for our brothers and sisters in Israel. 2 years of devastation for Gaza. And we couldn't breathe. It was as if the air itself had grown heavy. Tov vavohu, chaotic. There were vigils. There were empty chairs, like the one we had on the bima, which we took down the tallis and siddur and sign on Simchat Torah just a few days ago. The blue and yellow ribbons. There were tables with the names of the hostages, and their faces were everywhere throughout our building and in so many places. Every single day, at every minyan, twice a day, for 738 days, we recited their names. I wore this small silver necklace that says, Alev Shalanu Shavui Be'aza, which means our hearts are held captive in Gaza and bring them home now. It's given to me by the son of a hostage, Lior Rudef, in Hostage Square a couple of months after October 7th, where I met him. We spoke, and then I asked him, what could I do to help? There wasn't a lot. So he handed me this necklace and simply said, if I could wear this. And so I did, every day. And this week, I finally took it off. But then I checked. A year after October 7th, the Israeli military determined that Lior was in fact killed defending his kibbutz on October 7th. But his body was taken captive in Gaza. And I learned, at least when I checked a couple of days ago, his body still had not been returned. So of course today, we rejoice with the families whose loved ones have been freed. We also carry those who still wait for closure, who cannot bury their dead. For the living, we say the beautiful blessing we recited this morning and we do every morning. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam matir asurim. Praise to you, God, who frees the captive. And of course, for those deceased, we recite the El Malei Rachamim, the memorial prayer. May their souls be bound up in the bond of life. It was on Tuesday night this week, Simchat Torah, exactly 2 years after the attack on the Hebrew calendar, that Israel, and in some sense all of us, could breathe a little bit more again. The remaining living hostages were home. The scenes, if you saw them, were almost impossible to believe. A father embracing his daughter we last saw when she was just a few months old and now a toddler, getting to know her. The young couple who many of us saw in the videos, Noah Argamani being taken away on a motorcycle. She was released a couple of months after October 7th, and she'd been waiting for her boyfriend, Avinatan Or, who was finally released. Against all odds, if you watch that video, to see their embrace. It was as if, as the psalmist wrote, Shir HaMa'alot, B'shuv Adonai et Shivat Zion, Hayinu kecholmim. When God brought back the captives from Zion to Zion, we were like dreamers. Hayinu kecholmim. That psalm was written by our ancestors 2,500 years ago, returning from the Babylonian exile. And it became the part of the Birkat HaMazon, the grace after meals that we sing on Shabbat and holidays. Because every moment of fullness, every time we're gathered safely around a table with food, recalls the miracle of coming home. What a blessing it is to do that. And this week felt just like that. A return from exile. A dream fulfilled. Our tears became laughter. Lament into song. But as powerful as that dream is, and it is, it can't be the end of this story. It's not enough to wake up from this nightmare. But now we have to dream anew. Like the psalmist, let us become dreamers again. Who is our original dreamer of 125 years ago? Theodor Herzl. He wrote in Der Judenstaat, his book, in 1896, about his idea of a sovereign Jewish state. In 1896, it was just absolutely absurd. After centuries of exile, 2 millennia, the world laughed. Jews laughed. Herzl wrote in his diary at that time, at Basel, I founded the Jewish state. If I said this out loud today, I would be met with universal laughter. Perhaps in 5 years, certainly in 50, everyone will know it. It's an unbelievable line, because 50 years later, maybe it was 51 plus or minus, the UN voted in 1947 for the partition plan for a Jewish state. And Herzl's dream actually took form. His famous phrase that you all know still echoes. Im tirtzu, ein zo agada. If you will it, it is no dream. It can become real. Herzl dreamed of a safe, democratic, vibrant home for the Jewish people. Something that hadn't existed in thousands of years. So now today, I ask, who will be the next Herzl? Who will dare to dream again? Not of statehood, which we are blessed to have, but of healing, of a homeland not only secure for Jews, but one that can coexist with dignity for Palestinians. Because as it stands now, the current reality is not sustainable. Right now, Israelis and Palestinians live with layers and layers of trauma and mistrust. When I speak with friends in Israel, they tell me they can't even think of the day after. The wounds are too raw, the fear too close. And I imagine, though I haven't spoken to anyone in Gaza, they must feel the same. And I think something subtle has started to shift. Something in Israel as well. For all of the devastation, Israel today is actually qualitatively safer than it was on October 6, 2023. Hamas has been dismantled. Hezbollah deterred. The Houthis have been held in check. And Iran, behind all of this regional power, it has been shaken as well. Israel's technological and intelligence capabilities are really quite impressive. The existential fear, while maybe never gone completely, has lessened significantly. And when people begin to feel just a little bit safer, then they can begin a little bit, maybe start to dream about taking some risks for a different tomorrow, or a tomorrow of peace. So now that our hostages, all the living ones, are home, where do we go from here? I think my wife, who pointed me to Dr. Judith Lewis Herman, a pioneering psychiatrist and author of the book Trauma and Recovery. She teaches that healing unfolds in 3 stages. First, safety and stabilization. Second, remembrance and mourning. And third, reconnection and reintegration. After trauma, she writes that survivors first must restore a sense of basic safety, physical and emotional. Then they must remember and grieve what they lost. And finally, they must reconnect to others, to community, and most importantly, to hope. Israel and the Jewish people have been moving through those first 2 stages. There is greater safety than there was 2 years ago. Mourning continues, and remembrance is active in so many ways, ritual and in art, music, testimony, and prayer. I hope to bring some of that to our community in the coming months. But what remains is the hardest step: reconnection. How do we reweave the fabric, even though it really wasn't that full? The fabric that may have been already fraying, but now is really torn between Israelis and Palestinians, between Jews and Muslims around the world, maybe even between and among our own fractured communities. This week's Torah portion, Parashat Breshit, as Ellie read so beautifully, begins with darkness and chaos. The Aretz hayta tohu vavohu, the choshech mirachefet al pnei tehom. The earth was unformed and void, and darkness was upon the face of the deep. A rabbinic midrash teaches that before creation, God looks into the Torah. Take this to be a metaphor. But God looks into the Torah, into wisdom itself, and says, Yehi or, let there be light. And out of the chaos comes cosmos. Out of the tohu and vohu comes order, life, and meaning. Another midrash adds beautifully that the world is created out of love. Why? Because God desired relationship, a world in which free beings could choose kindness, justice, and compassion. Creation itself, if you will, is an act of hope, a divine risk that out of all of this confusion could emerge some kind of connection. And I think so it is with us. The world after October 7th was very messy. And even today, 2 years later, still messy, half-formed. There is a plan, but how are we going to implement it? I don't see yet the steps that need to be taken. The Council of Peace, a great idea, doesn't exist yet. The multinational force to guarantee security, to help govern, not there. Hamas, we saw horrifically this week, rearming. A sniper from them killed an Israeli soldier after the ceasefire. They executed their enemies and those that they thought were in connection to Israel. And of course, Israel itself remains in 53% of Gaza at risk and bombed a building in response to Hamas. But yet, let's go back to the Torah. The Torah invites us to begin again. Bereshit bara Elohim. In the beginning, God created. Or perhaps a different translation. God began to create. The verb is imperfect. It's ongoing. Creation's not a one-time act. It's a process. God's and ours. Every generation is called to see creation anew. Our tradition teaches us that after rupture, that's when the holy work has to begin. When two people are estranged, the Talmud says in Masechet Yevamot that reconciliation is so great, it brings the divine presence back into the world. When love departs, the Rabbi's right, the divine departs. And when peace returns, so does God. Isaiah, of course, famously imagines this image of they shall beat their swords into plowshares and their spears into pruning hooks. Some say the verse is naive, but maybe we can reframe it as aspirational. It insists that we, as human beings who know war and violence, maybe we can choose creation instead. We're certainly not there yet. There's a way to go. But the first step is to see another's pain. Not to equate every suffering, as I spoke about on Rosh Hashanah, but to acknowledge that pain is real from all different sides, and that denial dehumanizes us all. Dr. Herman, her most recent book, Truth and Repair, How Trauma Survivors Envision Justice, builds on her first book. She argues that healing is inseparable from justice, and that justice for trauma survivors is not retribution, but recognition, truth-telling, accountability, and repair. This idea is so rooted in Judaism and in Jewish ethics. The Hebrew word for tshuva means not only repentance, but of course to turn, a return, a turning back towards relationship, towards wholeness. This is the vision behind initiatives like the Parent Circle Family Forum that we hope to bring in the coming year. This group of bereaved Israeli and Palestinian parents who've lost children in the conflict. Those of us who've been on some of our Israel trips in the last few years, we sat down with them. We sit in a circle, and they just sit there and tell their stories. And you listen. These parents have chosen not to sit in a place of revenge or anger, but to speak together, to hear one another. They remind us that empathy is not weakness. It is actually moral courage. We can't erase the past, but we can, through truth and repair, we can transform it. So what would reconnection look like in reality? It would mean that Israel has to remain always secure, hopefully more so. That it could dare to imagine a new architecture of peace, that international coalition, perhaps of countries like the UAE, Saudi Arabia, Egypt, Jordan, with Western partners, could guarantee borders and safety, and reconstruction, that there could be a pathway to some kind of demilitarized Palestinian homeland where those people can dream. A Truth and Reconciliation Commission must exist, modeled on South Africa's, to allow testimony, acknowledgement, and some healing. And of course, that Israel has to remain that strong Jewish and democratic and safe country with the compassion to recognize the image of God in its neighbors. That's the dream. It may feel distant, maybe even very distant. But then again, so did Herzl's dream. The Torah's first act after this tohu vavohu and chaos, God doesn't erase the darkness. God separates it, defines it, gives it boundaries, and then begins to build. That's our task. Not to deny the chaos and everything that took place, but to bring light into it. Our mystics teach that when God first created the world, the divine light, this spiritual energy was so powerful, it was too powerful to contain. And the vessels that were supposed to hold it shattered, sending sparks of holiness throughout the universe. Our purpose, the mystics say, is the famous phrase, Tikkun Olam, which they felt meant to go and find those sparks, lift them up, and gather them to heal creation and the world. October 7th, it shattered us. But maybe, just maybe, this is the moment to gather those sparks. 2 years ago, we experienced on Simchat Torah when the music stopped. But this year we danced again with full hearts, with full joy, with the resolve of those who lived through the darkness of the abyss, and still we choose life. Don't forget the trauma, but we cannot live trapped inside it. The Torah begins with chaos and ends with Moses standing, overlooking the land. A vision not yet fulfilled. Every year we return to Bereshit, to this reading, because creation is never finished. Hope is never obsolete. Herzl wrote, quote, "Dream and deed are not as different as they seem. All deeds of people are only dreams at first. So let us dream again of a world where we can find peace, when trauma leads not to retribution but to vision. If we will it, im tirtzu, it will not be a dream." As we begin the Torah reading anew with Sefer and Parashat Bereshit, may we, like God, bring light from the darkness. May we, like the psalmist, become dreamers once again. And may we, like Herzl, dare to believe that even the most impossible dream can become reality. Yehei ratzon. So may it be God's will. Let us say, Amen.